A state of local emergency has been declared for the city of Abbotsford following extreme rainfall that has resulted in several localized emergencies within the city.
That's what it sounded like on CIVL radio a few days ago in Abbotsford, British Columbia. And the announcer giving the emergency information about the flooding in his city was Aaron Levy. He's the manager of the radio station, although he was safe and dry and broadcasting out of the studios located on the campus of the University of the Fraser Valley. Now, Levy was born in Toronto, but he's lived in Abbotsford for 11 years since starting his career in broadcasting, in case you couldn't tell from his great voice what he does for a living. At 36 years old, Levy is one of just a handful of Jewish people living in the Fraser Valley community. It's east of Vancouver, where catastrophic flooding from a so-called atmospheric river, November the 15th, washed out roads, caused landslides, required the Canadian Army to be called in to repair dikes and rescue people, and there's a boil water advisory in place in the Abbotsford farming zone, known as Sumas Prairie. And people, including Levy, are pointing fingers at the BC government for not doing enough soon enough to prepare people for climate emergencies such as this one.
This is a news story that obviously a lot of people are going to hear about because it impacts so many, and it's such a shocking reminder of what climate change can do and what we need to do to hearken to American politics right now. Like, look at this infrastructure bill. Probably pretty valuable.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Wednesday, November the 24th, 2021. Welcome to the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. And just so you know, this episode is being broadcast from Florida. I'm actually recording it in my mother's car because I don't have my regular studio. So if there's any problems with the audio this week, now you know why. On Saturday, Aaron Levy had finished doing the play-by-play for the university's men's and women's basketball games and had left to drive to Chiliwack for an event. It's about 35 to 40 minutes away. It started raining and there was so much water coming down that he lost control of his car. Although he wasn't hurt, the car had to be towed. But Levy had no idea that this was just a taste of the enormous amount of rain that swamped the area along the Trans-Canada Highway between Vancouver and the Alberta border and caused the Fraser River to flood and roads to give way and killed at least 5 people. Although the situation has stabilized somewhat, the danger is not over, and more atmospheric river rainstorms are forecast for BC this week. Coming up, Aaron Levy will be here to share what life is like living in the emergency. But first, here's what's making news elsewhere in Canada right now.
This is Sidney Margulies. I'm in Deerfield Beach, Florida, really from Montreal, but down here visiting for the winter. And this is what Jewish Canada sounds like.
Canada's ambassador to Israel, Lisa Stadelbauer, has weighed in on Sunday's terrorist attack in Jerusalem that killed an Israeli tour guide, Eliyahu David Kay, and wounded 4 other people. The ambassador had been at Yad Vashem that morning with embassy staff when a Hamas gunman opened fire at the Western Wall. He was shot dead, but not before the fatal shooting of the 26-year-old former lone soldier who had made Aliyah to Israel from South Africa, completed his military service, and was working as a tour guide. Stadelbauer tweeted that, quote, "We condemn this act of terrorism, which reminds us that anti-Semitism is a present and future threat. It does not only live in the past." Kay's funeral was Monday in Jerusalem. Aaron Levy's radio station is an award-winning operation run by community volunteers. The programming is mainly music shows and arts talk, but they've swung into action, informing the community on air and through Twitter about the latest information on road closures, evacuations, and where to get pet food for your animals. And he joins me now. How are you doing with this environmental disaster? What's the latest? Where are you, and are you safe?
Yeah, so I'm in downtown Abbotsford, and it's dry, it's safe. I work for the University of the Fraser Valley here's campus radio station. Our studios, which are on campus at the university, are safe, and we're in a higher elevation area. But of course, there are over 800 people who have been displaced, mostly from the Sumas Prairie area to the south of the center of Abbotsford, kind of snuck up against the border of America, just north of Sumas, Washington, and northeast of Mount Baker. And yeah, between Sumas Prairie and Yarrow, which is a small little hamlet between Chiliwack and Cultus Lake and Abbotsford, there have been hundreds of families evacuated from their space. There's the current Fraser Valley Current at Current FB, who's a great source for local information. They've estimated 135,000, if I'm not mistaken, cattle and other livestock that have been threatened or otherwise have perished in the circumstances that we've seen through the flooding. So I'm safe. Most Abbotsfordians are safe. Many Abbotsfordians are impacted. And those who have been impacted the most severely, I mean, it's estimated $1 billion worth of economic damage just with regards to the farmland right now, I think.
So, I mean, you're there and you're doing programming. Are you still able to be on the air? And what, if any, changes to your schedule is happening? Because, like, for information for people,
maybe you've heard, or maybe listeners have heard a bit of a hubbub, a bit of a controversy with regards to provincial alert messaging. You know, we've all in the last few years been getting our notifications on our cell phones if there's a weather warning, or, you know, sometimes Amber Alerts, missing children, missing peoples. But famously, apparently, the province of British Columbia has almost never used this service since 2019. Of course, all radio stations that are licensed on FM are required to maintain an emergency broadcast system that cuts through your broadcasting when official, federal, other necessary emergency alerts are to be sent out. So obviously, we're capable of doing that, although the province hasn't utilized it yet in order to make that happen. So at CIVL, what we've done is the city of Abbotsford has declared a state of emergency, at first for a week, and now they've extended it for another week. As of today, Mayor Henry Braun at 2 p.m. announced via press conference that would be extended. And so we're airing about 3 times an hour, about 6 minutes an hour. 10% of our time right now is information about the emergency. Where can you find out more? Where are you supposed to evacuate at this point? What steps can you be taking? What is the situation? There's mudslides, there's flooding. Stay off the roads between communities if you're not. You know, I host my own radio show every week on CIVL. So on Wednesday, I interviewed one of the great journalists from Fraser Valley Current, who's based in Chiliwack, Grace Kennedy. And she gave us a big high level, but also on the ground overview of what's going on in the Valley, what's important for people to know. I also I got to scoop CTV and Global and CBC because a local fella named who's a former who's a musician and has been involved in the music community and the university community. He was actually airlifted he was picked up by a rescue vessel on Wednesday morning early, and I was able to do a brief interview with him for about 15-20 minutes before he did his evening news rounds.
Are your parents flipping out?
Yeah, so basically Monday to Wednesday, or Tuesday to Thursday or so, I've been getting messages from everybody, from high school, from Toronto, from Guelph, where I spent my university days, from Kitchener, to some people have relocated to Vancouver, lots of people from Vancouver checking in. So yeah, everybody's been concerned. You know, you hear on the news Abbotsford. Well, you know, people don't usually know much about Abbotsford. So those who know me know I'm in Abbotsford, and it rings the bell to them. No, yeah, but people, you know, it's pretty straightforward for me. Just they check in, and yeah, I'm okay. It's the prairies, the south. My mom, it's shout out my mom. It was her 70th birthday yesterday, so we actually had a large Zoom with my aunt from Jerusalem, who had no idea this was even going on. But of course, my aunt from Toronto, or my cousin from Toronto, knew all the details. And my sister's in Nanaimo, so we're in touch. And yeah, I mean, they're concerned. This is a news story that obviously a lot of people are going to hear about because it impacts so many, and it's such a shocking reminder of what climate change can do. And
what do you need? What can we do?
Yeah, I think, you know, personally, what do I need is for the engineering to all work out well, and for the weather to go the directions that it needs to go. What people can do, I think right now it's about understanding what's happening and learning what they can about the causes, and taking a little more seriously things like, hey, public safety, environmental consultations. Let's look at what's going on in our communities that are relevant to this. What is our local municipality or province or federal representative doing about different environmental concerns as they relate to different development projects, as different and different infrastructure initiatives, because it seems that here in the Valley, the lack of attention to those pieces is impacting people all over the country. And the more we get engaged and the more we know about what's happening in our community in these ways that are kind of the bread and butter, but also forgettable aspects of local community life, the more we pay attention to them and the more we're informed, the better we can protect against the pitfalls of tragedies like this.
So you said before we were taping that you got 1,000 miles between you and the nearest shul, right?
I don't know about 1,000 miles, 4 federal districts and roughly 1 million people.
Oh, 1 million people. I'm sorry, between you and the nearest shul. If that's important to you, is there any Jewish people or infrastructure in Abbotsford or the area or around that you know of and that are being impacted?
There's very little Jewish. I've lived here for 11, 12 years, and I never stopped being the first Jewish person a person's met in Abbotsford. So, I definitely know 1, 2, 3, 4, I think I can count Jewish families in Mission and Chiliwack, or 2 who I know through the university, and are maybe 3. Many people commute, of course. So, there's at least 1 or 2 Jewish families or Jewish folk who work at the University of the Fraser Valley, but live, either in Surrey or Coquitlam or something, what we would consider over the bridge or on the other side of the valley. White Rock is where the nearest synagogue is, and White Rock is on the other side of Langley, which is a couple 100,000 people, and like on the other side of Surrey, which is 700,000 people. So in between us and them, it's a sparse Jewish community. So I've had seders in Abbotsford with one of the Manitoba families who have been here for a few years. And that's lovely, but I got to go to Burnaby to get Manischewitz. So if there are people listening and watching, I'd love to connect with others in the Valley who are tribes people, and I'm sure it would be rewarding for us to connect and develop relationships for sure.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. Integrity, community, quality, and customer care. Today's listener shout-out goes to Colleen Paul in Edmonton. She runs the Jacina Jewish Archives there. And we'll close today's show with a bit of a cooking theme, a clip from Canadian chef Shauna Goodman, who now lives in Israel. And she shared her recipes for latkes with Edmonton's Jewish Federation in an event called Oil Vey. It's Hanukkah. Get it? Oil Vey? Anyway, the recipe is in our show notes.
I'm starting off with cheese latke because in Montreal, I don't know about you, we were all about the latke. It was the excuse to eat a latke, and usually a potato latke. That, thank God we had a food processor, because that's really the only way to make the lacy ones and the crispy ones, and to actually be smiling as you're making the latkes, because it really is a labor of love, these latkes. And then I started to think about something that's a little bit more interesting just than the potato one. And I know people are doing potato and zucchini and carrot and sweet potato, and they're all beautiful, and the more the merrier. But I remembered a teacher of mine, Gil Marks, who unfortunately passed away about 15 years ago. And I remember living in New York City, and he came to teach us a cooking class. And he talked about these Ashkenazi cheese latkes, and they made an impression on me. And I happen to love anything like sweet cheese, like the inside of a Montreal cheese bagel is like the best thing in the whole entire world. So imagine the inside of a cheese bagel, fried up and a little bit crispy. And with how dark it is right now, nothing will slip down easier.